So students, now we will be doing about solvency ratio. There are four solvency ratios: debt equity ratio, proprietary ratio, debt to total asset ratio, and interest coverage ratio. Now we will understand. So the first one, debt equity ratio. This ratio expresses the relationship between long-term debts and shareholders fund. This ratio is calculated to ascertain the soundness of the long-term financial policies of the firm. Then is the debt to total asset ratio. This ratio is a variation of the debt equity ratio, the upper one, and gives the same indication more or less. It measures the extent to which long-term loans are covered by assets, which indicate the margin of safety available to providers of long-term debts. Then is the proprietary ratio. This ratio indicates the proportionate of total asset funded by owners or shareholders. Higher proprietary ratio is an indicator of sound financial position from long term. Now, the formulas of these three ratios, the interest coverage ratio we will be doing in the next video. Debt to equity ratio, debt by equity. Debt means long-term debt, remember. Proprietary ratio is shareholders fund, that is equity only by total asset. Proprietors fund, shareholders fund, and equity have the same meaning. Debt to total asset is debt by total asset. Let's see the meaning of debt first. It's long-term borrowings plus long-term provisions. Total asset means current asset plus non-current asset. Current assets or non-current assets are tangible assets, intangible assets, non-current investment, long-term loans and advances, and this current assets, which also has many items. That is cash in hand, cash at bank, then short-term loans and advances, then inventories, then it's written over here, inventories, trade receivables, cash and bank balances, short-term loans and advances, and other current assets, which includes, as we have done in another video also, that includes prepaid expense, accrued income, and so on. They are non-current assets plus current assets. It can be written like that also. Now we have the meaning of equity. Equity or shareholders fund or proprietors fund is a share capital plus reserves and surplus. See, long-term liabilities we have not taken, that is long-term borrowings is not taken in equity. Equity is non-current asset plus current asset minus current liability, that is working capital, minus non-current liabilities. Non-current asset plus working capital minus non-current liabilities is also equity. By any means, whether you take from the liability approach or from the asset approach, you can get equity. See, asset approach, tangible assets, intangible assets, non-current investment, long-term loans and advances, plus current asset minus current liability minus long-term liabilities is nothing but equity. Remember students, when we are talking about total asset, it also means total of liability. Total asset also includes total of liability. That means entire asset must be equal to liability. Remember, that is total liability event. Total liability is also considered as total assets only. Okay. Now we will do a sum. Calculate debt equity ratio, proprietary ratio, and debt to total asset ratio. Share capital or equity is given 2,50,000. Reserves and surplus we will add to it. That is 1,10,000. Long-term borrowings and long-term provisions we will be getting to get debt. And non-current assets, current assets we will add. We will get total assets. Current liability has no such use as such. So total asset 3,80,000 plus 2,20,000, 6 lakhs. Debt, two items, 1,20,000 and 50, 1,70,000. And equity is 2,50,000 and 10,000 of reserves, that is 3,60,000. Debt equity ratio, just we will put the values debt by equity 1,70,000 by 3,60,000, that is 0.47222222. But we have to give the answer in two decimal places. If said in the sum, then also, if not said, then also in two decimal places. 5 and more than 5 rule you remember of arithmetic, 0.47. Proprietary ratio, shareholders fund by total asset, that is this formula, 360 by 6 lakhs is 0.60. Total debt to total asset, debt by total asset, 170 by 6 lakhs, that is 0.2833, it is 0.28. This is the most simple sum. We will do one more sum. Calculate debt equity proprietary and debt to total asset ratio. The sum is given like this: land and building, plant and machinery, intangible asset, inventory, trade receivables. These 4 items we will add. Inventory also add, means 5 items we will add to get the total asset. Total liability we can get, current liability we can get is 1 lakh 20, and long term borrowings 12 lakhs. So we will take debt as long term borrowings only. So asset we have added all the 5 items, 1 2 3 4 5 items added, 20 lakh 29 lakh 20,000. Debt is 12 lakhs long term borrowings. Equity, asset minus debt minus current liability, if you will do, we will get equity. Equity we have found out by subtracting total asset minus debt, that is long term borrowings, minus current liabilities. We got 16 lakhs, and then we use in the formula debt equity ratio, debt by equity, that is 12 lakhs by 16 lakhs, 0.75 is to 1. Then we have proprietary ratio, shareholders fund by total asset, that is 16 lakhs by 20 lakh 29 lakh 20,000, that is 0.55 is to 1. Is to 1 is a must, students. In last sum I have not shown that I should show. And in this one also 12 lakhs by 29 lakhs, that is 0.4901, that is 0.41 only, means we will not take more than 2 places of decimal. Over here also I am putting is to 1, so it will be easier for you all to understand. It will be always in the ratio format, that is why given is to 1. The denominator is always is to 1. Now third sum, debt equity ratio of a company is 1:2. Which of the following would increase, decrease, or no change in the ratio? First one is repayment of long term borrowings. Now tell me one thing, repayment of long term borrowings of 40,000. Debt equity, so debt has reduced, though cash has reduced. Cash has nothing to do with equity, so my numerator has reduced, so debt is reduced but equity remains unchanged, so it will be a decrease. Numerator has reduced, so it will be decrease. Purchase of fixed asset of 50,000 on long term deferred payment basis, it will increase because debt has increased. Debt equity, nothing to do with asset. My equity remains same, my debt has increased because on long term deferred payment basis I have to pay. That means my debt has increased. Issued new equity shares, so my equity has increased, that means my denominator has increased. Debt by equity, equity denominator has increased, so my ratio will be reduced. Shareholders fund equity are increased, so it will be a reduction in the ratio of debt to equity. Declaration of final dividend amounting to 20,000, it will increase because total shareholders funds are decreased. Equity has decreased by the amount of profit appropriated for dividend payable, but long-term debts remain unchanged. Long-term debts remain unchanged, debt remains unchanged. My reserves has reduced because of the amount has been taken away from the reserves to dividend. Goods purchased on credit, there will be no change because it is not affecting my debt, neither affecting my equity. Issue of bonus share, it will again decrease because my equity has increased. Shareholders fund, that is equity, are affected since there is only a conversion of shares. Acha, neither debt nor the shareholders fund has been affected. Issue of bonus share, it will not, it will be no change, students. It will be no change. It will be no change because issue of bonus shares, my shareholders fund has not changed. From reserves it has become into shares. Reserves is also shareholders fund, shares is also shareholders fund, share capital is also shareholders fund, and date has also not changed, so there will be no change. Hope you all have understand. Then you have to do this homework. This is sum number 1, you have to find out these 3 ratios. Then this is sum number 2, you have to find out these 3 ratios, and this is sum number 3. Now sum number 2, I have given one's answer, so I have to remove that. Okay, and sum number 3 is also given. Oh, sum number 2. Two sums are there in the homework which you will be doing in and showing it to me. Thank you, students. Thank you, students. Okay. Next, our solvency ratio is still not over. We will be doing the